Hey everyone, and welcome back to another unit builder video. The Switch port for Tokyo Mirage Sessions just launched over the weekend, and along with it, we got a new banner. Talk about a shocker. I never played the first TMS game for the Wii U, and so I wasn't aware that Intelligent Systems even recognized it as a Fire Emblem game. But I guess they do, cause guess who's on the newest banner for this month? I still feel really bad for anyone that was hoping for Farfetch'd, but we'll all just have to remain hopeful that Jill, Shinen, and Nils will get in someday. Anyway, so I think today's video is going to be extra interesting considering the new unit that we're about to talk about, Itsuki. From my understanding, Itsuki is the main protagonist for Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is actually kinda odd considering he's a free Tempest Trials unit, but whatever. I think his artwork looks really cool, and though I've yet to play TMS, nor do I really understand how Chrom or any of the other Fire Emblem characters fit into the world, I do hope to someday give it a try, and I'm looking forward to getting a small taste of it through this month's events. That being said, let's take a good look at Itsuki and see what he's packing. He comes in as an infantry sword unit, although unlike a lot of the speedsters that we've been getting over the past 2 months, Itsuki, along with all of the TMS characters really, have a very interesting playstyle. As far as stats go, at 5 stars level 40, Itsuki's neutral stats read as HP 41, Attack 37, Speed 30, Defense 33, and Resistance 32. And remember that because he is a Tempest Trials unit, he'll be locked to neutral stats once he becomes available in the Grail Shop months from now. His stats for the most part are fairly middling, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. If this were a Gen 1 unit, I'd be much more concerned, as his base stat total would be much lower. But with some great base attack and adequate defense and resistance, Itsuki's got a lot of flexibility going for him. He's got some surprisingly modest bulk, which is kind of refreshing too. You don't seem to get that a lot nowadays, which is definitely sparking some ideas in my head. Let's move on to his weapon though, as that's what will ultimately define his playstyle. For his personal weapon, Itsuki comes with a Mirage Falchion. God, I hope I pronounced that correctly. But anyway, it has native effectiveness against dragons, it automatically grants him a flat +3 defense, and it comes with an interesting built-in session effect. If the unit initiates combat, grants bonus to units attack and defense equal to 3 plus the number of allies who have already acted times 2. Okay, let's pause there and break that down. And if I remember anything from middle school algebra, it's the order of operations. So let's say 2 allies have already moved before him. That's 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7, which is the maximum value for this effect. So if at least 2 allies take action before Itsuki, he gets +7 to his attack and defense on the player phase. That's pretty nice. Let's keep reading though, as it has a different effect on the enemy phase. If the foe initiates combat, grants bonus to units attack and defense equal to 7 minus the number of foes who have already acted times 2. Okay, another equation. So let's say it's the start of the enemy phase. The first foe engages. That's 0 times 2, which is 0, and then 7 minus 0, which is obviously 7. So that's a guaranteed +7 attack and defense on the first enemy engagement, which is also very nice. This number does decrease with each following engagement, but considering the minimum value for this effect is 3, that means that no matter how many enemies engage onto Itsuki, he will always have at least +3 to his attack and defense. That is really exceptional. This is one hell of a personal weapon, and it really beefs him out into an offensive threat. Let's keep going. For his assist, he comes with Swap. Meh. Swap's not bad. It's not repositioned, but it's not bad. For his special, Itsuki comes with Soul, which is honestly pretty solid special for him. With Soul restoring HP equal to half of the damage he deals, Soul is a great special to give him some self-sustain. If I remember correctly, Soul only has a cooldown count of 3 too, which is pretty sweet. It won't take as long to charge as maybe Ether, but he'll still be getting the healing effect for self-sustain. Okay, we're gonna jump over his A slot, which brings us to Attack Defense Link 3. It's funny, as I was reading the weapon description for Mirage Falchion, I kept thinking to myself, I feel like Itsuki's really gonna want a Link skill to help ensure that his allies are always performing before him. And look at that! He comes with one. Attack and Defense Link offers both him and an ally plus 6 attack and defense after using a movement skill, like reposition, pivot, swap, etc. This is actually a really solid option for him because, as we already discussed, in order to make the most of his personal weapon, at least 2 units have to move before him. If another unit uses reposition on Itsuki, not only will it get him closer to the foe, it'll buff both him and that ally's attack and defense, and then on top of that, help trigger Mirage Falchion's effect. Okay, and the last part of Itsuki's base kit is his C skill, Drive Defense 2. It's a supportive skill that grants plus 3 defense in combat to any allies within 2 spaces. It's, I don't know how effective these skills were back when FEH was still new in 2017, but in 2020, we don't use drive skills anymore, so that is going away. And on that note, that is the end of Itsuki's base kit. Homeboy's got a really solid base kit, and with a weapon like that, I've already got some interesting ideas for builds. Let's not waste any more time though and explore some budget options. Okay, so for this free-to-play friendly build, we're going to keep a few assets from his base kit. We're obviously going to keep his base weapon and then slot reposition in as his preferred assist skill of choice. If you really don't want to use the fodder though, you can just keep swap, especially if you're only planning on using him as a bonus unit for Tempest Trials. For his special, we're also going to keep Soul in place as it'll serve as his main source of self-sustain, and with its moderate cooldown, it should be activating frequently enough. The self-sustain will also better serve him for those long Tempest Trials maps. Okay, as for his A slot, I thought that Sturdy Blow might be a solid option for him. Sturdy Blow 3 offers plus 4 attack and defense in combat during the player phase, which will of course stack with the buffs he's already getting from his weapon. The really awesome thing about Itsuki is that because of his weapon's effects, plural, he's really viable in both phases, so his A slot can be really flexible depending on what skills you've got lying around. I think that so long as his attack and defense continue to get buffed, any skills here could work. As for his B slot, I decided to keep his Link skill. I think this is the first time I've used a Link skill in one of my builds here on this channel, but like I mentioned before, the skill synergizes really well with Mirage Falchion. As long as his allies are capable of moving him around the map, he'll get a lot of mileage out of this skill. Alright, as for his C slot, I decided to run with Attack Smoke. You can never really go wrong with the Smoke skill, and Attack Smoke is likely his best option anyway, because he'll be functioning in both phases. His allies can help set him up to attack on the player phase, and once the enemies have been debuffed, he'll be ready to tank through their hits on the enemy phase. This is probably the best C slot I've got for him today. Okay, and lastly for his Sacred Seal, I've got 2 options here. Option number 1 is Quick Riposte, which is a handy skill to help him double enemies in the enemy phase. It's a great way to patch up his speed and help build his special that much faster, and because of how great his defenses are, he should have no trouble tanking through the enemy follow-up attacks. Now, for option number 2, I think that Itsuki could also definitely make use of Heavy Blade 3. Between his weapon effects and all the skills we've implemented, we're stacking his attack pretty high. Between Mirage Falchion and his Link skill, we're looking at plus 13 attack. This actually goes up to plus 17 attack on the player phase if you keep Sturdy Blow in place, and this doesn't even factor in the minus 7 debuff on the enemy phase thanks to Attack Smoke. Heavy Blade is a fantastic option for him, and it'll definitely help him activate Soul that much more frequently. Alright, so that was essentially build number 1. For build number 2, we're going to make a few tweaks and play around with some heavier investment skills. As you can see, this second build is largely going to revolve around his A slot, Distant Counter. I think that with Itsuki's mixed bulk, he's a really great candidate for this skill. I do think that his overall bulk could be further improved though, which is what the rest of his build is going to strive to do. By the way, I'm going to be jumping around a bit for this next part. For his B slot, you'll notice that we're bringing Quick Riposte back, but I decided to move it into his B slot this time instead. As I already mentioned, Quick Riposte is a great way to patch up his low speed in the enemy phase, but more importantly, it frees up his S slot. For his Sacred Seal, I decided to go with Distant Defense 3. It's a solid skill that grants Itsuki plus 6 defense and resistance against ranged attacks. Perfect for a distant counter build. Now, we do have quite a few other options for his B slot too. Attack Res Link 3 is another really fun option if you're a fan of Link skills, and the boost to his resistance would be preferred to help him square off against any magical threats. Another solid B slot might be Lull Attack Defense 3, which helps mitigate any enemy buffs while also debuffing the foe in combat. An overall excellent skill for any infantry melee units. I also can't show you guys a distant counter build without mentioning Null C Disrupt. It's most useful, of course, in the competitive scene when you've got foes that will be actively trying to prevent Itsuki from counterattacking, but it's still too good a skill not to mention. Alright, and then the last slot that I pretty much skipped over was his C slot. I wasn't 100% sure what to put here, as I still think that Attack Smoke is his best option, but as a more premium alternative, I thought that Attack Res Oath might be worth mentioning. As long as Itsuki starts a player phase next to an ally, he gets +5 to his attack and resistance. Not bad. This skill is pretty damn exclusive though, so a skill like Odd Res Wave 3 could serve as another budget option to help beef him out more on odd number turns. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this build. However, I did want to mention that if you don't really like Soul and would prefer to use Aether as his special, I would highly recommend implementing at least Heavy Blade in his S slot, just to help him build those charges quickly. I typically prefer to use Aether only when I'm able to bring the cooldown cost to 4, but if you're comfortable with 5, then by all means, go for it. Alright, and that wraps things up for our last build. Itsuki's obviously got a lot going for him and can be built in so many different ways. This is by no means an end-all be-all for him, so feel free to just play around with whatever skills you've got lying nearby. Lastly, here are what his stats look like when fully merged up. Itsuki's a really solid unit in my opinion, so I would not be surprised if some of you guys were really tempted to build him. His attack and defense can get pretty damn high for a free unit, so he's definitely a solid contender for a Grail project. Even though I haven't even played TMS yet, I'm actually tempted to build him just because I love his art. I just don't know where I'm gonna get the Grails from, as I'm already trying to build Jerome, Cormag, and Linus. Okay, and that is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm super excited for this next Tempest Trials event. 1, so that I can play around with Itsuki, and 2, so that I can get some of those sweet orbs. There's a new banner that just dropped that has Lewin on it, and I'm hungry for special spiral fodder. So I'll be summoning on the last day of that banner, and I'm looking forward to it. One last thing before we end this video. I have a quick question for you all that's been on my mind. Recently, I've been really tempted to build a Discord server for this channel. I realize that this channel is very small, but when it comes to video games, community building is really important to me, and I think it'd be really cool to have a hub where we could all chat, share ideas for builds, geek out about Fire Emblem and other games, etc. Is this something that you all might be interested in? I'm gonna set up a poll here on the side. Please go ahead and click on it and let me know what you guys think, or just let me know in the comments section below. Again, thanks again for watching everyone, and happy summoning. Take care. Bye.